Live from the Bayside Bunker, it's episode 171 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and we're back home, as they say, down in South Florida. Of course, for myself, just moved here recently, for those that don't know, but excited to be back at Gulfstream Park. We're going to cover the Rainbow Pick 6, of course, the Jackpot Pick 6. However, I wanted to cover it because one of the stakes of 3 that are going to be run on Saturday are just outside the late pick 5. So why not cover an extra race for all of you? Welcome in, everyone. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate if you guys do end up liking the podcast tonight, which of course we hope you do. Please go down below video player here on YouTube, or if you're over on X/Twitter, please come on over to YouTube, give us a like and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it, because not only is it the best way to support our channel and completely free to do, it also helps us push these videos out into YouTube's algorithm to hopefully bring more horse players like you to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. Scrolling on the bottoms of the screen right now through the ticker is our normal podcast schedule every single week, starting on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern with Pacific Horseplayers, our West Coast racing show, hosted by Noah, co-hosted by Ryan Anderson and Jackson Muniz. Of course, right here with us, Bettin N Boozin every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and every single Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You have Picks and Ponies, hosted by Howard, co-hosted by Pete Visco and Paul Halloran. This week, they're coming a great card over at Tampa Bay for Tampa Bay Derby Day, which I actually will be going to Tampa Bay for the first time this weekend. So if anyone's going to be out at Tampa Bay Derby Day, please DM me over on Twitter. It's right here on my name tag at APRoscoeK. Please DM me. My DMs are open. Would love to meet up with you guys, have a beverage, or just watch some races together. That would be fantastic. So if that interests you at all, again, please DM me over on Twitter or follow me, because I will post all of my picks for both Gulfstream and Tampa Bay coming up on Saturday. But of course, you can listen to all of our podcasts we post here on YouTube in audio form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there if that interests you. TikTok and Instagram, short form content over on at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. On those 2 platforms, I posted a bunch of stuff on Florida Derby Day as I was down at Gulfstream Park, and a very exciting video was posted of myself trying to root home my favorite horse in training right now, that being, of course, Commandment, as you see on the name tag bottom left. Was super excited to get that one home. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but we also have a ton of great sponsored shows that we have here on the podcast every single week that we think you all will enjoy. Our contest show, sponsored by Twin Spires, is the Leaderboard on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Whether you're a brand new to contest play or a seasoned veteran, the Leaderboard goes through these live money contests, talks about the strategy, brings on previous winners to talk about their strategy and how they ended up winning the contest, both and recaps from previous contests, as well as previews, including a big one this weekend with the Tampa Bay Derby, Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge qualifier. It's a fantastic show. Go give it a listen if you are interested. Wire to Wire, sponsored by our good friends at First Bet in Santa Anita, talking the Coast to Coast Pick 5 every single weekend, or every single Saturday, excuse me, and that is done Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern normally. However, tomorrow, that is going to be March 5th, it is going to be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. You'll see a very familiar face of mine with Howard tomorrow night. So if that interests you, please go please subscribe and come back tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And thanks to our friends over at First Racing for sponsoring that. And a new show, Triple Crown Trail, new episode is dropping tonight, talking about those horses that now find themselves on the Triple Crown Trail, including my beautiful Commandment. If you guys are interested at all, and Adelphi, sponsored by our good friends at Adelphi Racing, who have also been red hot, Matt Couture, to talk about his horses as well as horses on the Triple Crown Trail. And thanks to Adelphi for sponsoring that. You also have our Power Picks tip sheet that we always give out, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. It's our tip sheet that comes out to you guys every single Saturday, including price plays, spot plays, pick five grids that we've been giving out for over 5 years now on the podcast. And we're still well and truly in the green. If that interests you at all, which we sure hope it does, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the description below. Guys, we'll get right into the handicapping here in 2 seconds, and I'll bring on my co-hosts before we do that. But of course, if you guys are new here, you find yourself coming back and haven't commented in the live chat before, it's in the bottom right-hand side of the screen on both YouTube and X. We read every single one and would love to have your guys participate in the Gulfstream Park extravaganza. So again, if you guys are at all interested, we sure hope you are. Comment in the live chat on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. We have our two co-hosts we're going to bring on tonight. One is a very familiar face in Philly's own Andrew Rosinski. And of course, for those that are a little bit older in the Bettin N Boozin fandom, would recognize this man, the man from the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Charlie, we're glad to have you back on. Andrew, glad to have you back on, of course, as always. But Charlie, my friend, you heard the Gulfstream Park bells ringing, so of course that interests you.
Yeah, no, when Patrick was hitting me up to see if I could sub in tonight, I think he already knew I was going to have to ask where that would be about. And as soon as he said Gulfstream Park, I think he pretty much knew that there was no way. I know I'm now not the only Mr. South Beach, as you mentioned at the beginning, now that you're also down there, but everyone knows that for the past few years, I've also adopted that as my home track. So always try to get to be on a show for Gulfstream when I can.
Yeah, Mr. South Beach joined us, but also the King of Parks, as denoted. Andrew, it's honestly a really good sequence on Saturday. Not necessarily for Tampa Bay Derby type aspirations, however, but lots of competitive fields, including everyone's favorite time of the week.
Yeah, it's not going to be my favorite time of the week this week, but I definitely think these stakes races are very wide open and very competitive.
Yeah, and we covered Gotham Day last week. Lots of good picks on our side as well. Iron Honor really made that kind of harder for himself than we thought, but never truly in doubt was that horse. And the horse that I gave out before ended up being very low on favoritism, was like 7-5 in Donegal Surges. However, I got over 5-1 on that double that was given out on the show. So congrats to anyone who played along. A bunch of other horses came through for a bunch of the guys. So it was a very, very worthwhile watch last week for Gotham Day, and we hope it is just as good this week. But of course, cheers to everybody out there. Of course, there's not any betting without the Boozin on this show, so cheers to everyone again. Let's get this started. The Rainbow Pick 6 starts in race number 7 on Saturday at 3:50 p.m. Eastern. It actually starts with a stake race. It's the Silks Run stakes for $125,000, going the flat 5 and the turf with rails very out. So that could be something to take into your handicapping. The rails are at 73 feet out, and when they are out, they generally play to speed. A field of 7 to kick off the pick 6 with a morning line favorite of who knows, because of course, covering Gulfstream on a Wednesday, we do not know morning lines. We do not have numbers in the program, but most likely will be headed by the number 3 Litigation, extremely talented colt for Brian Lynch, and partnered up with Mario Gutierrez once again. You have Coppola in here, Super Quest, lots of horses very familiar with this type of division. And bringing up our picks on the screen right now, Charlie, actually very based, my friend. See, look at that. Bring you back on the screen, already very based. That's what we like to see. But Andrew's going a little bit off the beaten path here with Reza's Rolex, who's also a very talented gelding. I'll bring the DRF on the screen right now. But Andrew, you get to tell us why we're wrong and you're going to be right. Reza's Rolex is a horse I'm also interested in a little bit. Obviously, Charlie is as well. Both have him in second, but I am very slight to my Buchero, so would love to hear what you like about the number 1, Reza's Rolex.
I mean, I just like the consistency. That's the biggest part, no matter if it's on synthetic or on turf. When it's at 5 or 5.5 furlongs, especially 5, this horse is just dominant. And in the last 2 years, I mean, this horse has only lost one race out of the 7. And it was by a neck in the Turf Dash to My Boy Prince. And we all know how much I love My Boy Prince when it comes to turf sprinters. So yeah, I just think that this horse is in really good form. There's a ton of pace here, which is my concern, but this horse likes a duel and likes a matchup like that. And I think that this horse thrives in those situations and should be able to kick clear at the end.
And Charlie, obviously we were both interested, as I mentioned. I think this horse is honestly better with a target. The last couple of race times this horse has run, both at Tampa on the flat 5, but last time best buyer by far at the 98. But this horse is 13 for 18, so obviously that sticks out like a sore thumb. And being right next to Litigation, you and I both think it's going to be a duel between those two, and obviously Andrew does as well. He is also going 1-3.
Yeah, I really do think this is a 2-horse race. It's just going to ultimately come down to, do they go fast enough that Litigation takes advantage and picks up the pieces, or can Reza Rolex, be disciplined enough to, as you mentioned, I agree, Kyle. I think the horse does like to have a target. I think my one concern, though, is when you look at when Reza Rolex has had a target for the most part, he's usually right behind, within a length or so. And where my concern is knowing Coppola, who we'll get to later, who likes to fly like crazy. I guess my concern is if you try to stay within a length of that pace, I think that's going to be too quick when you have others like Super Quest in here as well, where that could just set up perfectly for Litigation. But I do think Edgar Zayas, who's incredible on the turf, especially at Gulfstream, if he can get this one to be disciplined enough to just save the ground on the rail and not go too quick too soon, it could cause some trouble for Litigation, who, as we'll talk about, is going to have to come from out of it. But I got to give credit to Reza Rolex. I know I always like to talk about my boy Reef Runner, but I think Reza Rolex is right up there in terms of the most consistent Gulfstream sprinters there is, or just South Beach sprinters there are, period. Because like you mentioned, I mean, to be 13 of 18 on the win end in the most unpredictable races where it's so easy for something to go wrong, and 16 of 18 in the top 2 is just utterly ridiculous.
All right, so if you're playing Charlie Bingo already, that's already a tick off, because we got one of the horses. We got either me and Mr. C reference or Reef Runner reference. So you guys can already check that one off of the Charlie Bingo. But I agree with you on both the pace scenario and obviously the consistency of Reza's Rolex. But Litigation, guys, he's so talented. He really had no business at all winning that race last time out. Still ended up getting up. I know they went very, very quick early, but again, it looks that way on paper for this race as well. Brian Lynch has spotted this horse very, very well. And as long as Mario Gutierrez does not ride like he's riding Sister Troyenne this past weekend, we have a very good chance with Litigation, especially with the pace scenario that is on at hand. He's just always super consistent. The only concern is that he tends to have a lot to do come down the stretch, especially going these flat 5s. I think his best distance is always going to be a little bit longer to that 5.5. And I'm assuming Brian Lynch is going to use this race here for a springboard going into the fall at Keeneland, most likely in either an allowance race, although I might have used all his conditions by now, or some type of turf sprint stake that's not coming to my head right now. But Litigation's in great form, ultra consistent, and hopes to take another step forward here. If he does, there's a lot of horses running for second, but Reza's Rolex is the one that's going to have a lot of say in that. There's a bunch of others in here, and none of us have Coppola in there. I think a lot of us can say, you just don't think he's the same horse as he used to be. This horse used to be fantastic at flat 5. And I think Dale Romans is finally realizing that this horse is way more of a flat 5 than anything else. But just since coming off the layoff and turning 7, he just hasn't been able to, even when he's gotten the lead by himself, he just has not been able to continue when he's facing, the greatest turf sprinters of all time and Reef Runner and Litigation, obviously. It's just going to be a tough sledding, and with other speed again in Coppola's corner, it's not something I'm willing to trust on the win end, even in the money, because again, none of us have him anywhere. The number 6, Sosua Summer, Andrew, is a horse for Barbosa, kind of been passed around down at Gulfstream. Jose D'Angelo had a piece of him a couple last year, but this horse is another one, always super consistent, maybe just a little bit, probably not up to snuff to a bunch of these other competitions in here. But if he can pick up the pieces late, if they go fast enough, he's definitely one that can sneak in there for either, your tries, supers, or anything between.
Yeah, I just think it's a small enough field that you could probably catch a price coming late, which is what I think this horse is. His last 2 turf starts were good enough to be competitive in this field. They might not have been against the type of competition that Reservoir Rolex or litigation have faced lately, but I think that if the pace is strong, which he seems to be, the only two horses are going to be closing are litigation and this one's probably going to be 4 or 5x the price of litigation. So I think that this is a good horse to throw in your trifectas or superfectas for a little extra value.
Yeah, and I look, absolutely. As long as this horse can class up a little bit, maybe run somewhere high 80s like he has been in the past. So Sue Summer is definitely one that can blow up that type of trifecta. But the last horse we'll talk about, then we'll move on, is Super Quest. Charlie, you and I have the same exact picks, but this is one that's going to be vying for that favoritism. Always been very fast out of the blocks. Dylan Davis, who's actually back riding, very good to see that name in the program again after a long extended injury break. Horse loves Gulfstream Park, likes the flat 5, going to have to deal with the speed of Coppola to his outside, but with how Coppola's given it up in the past, this horse draws to the inside. Maybe he can stay on for a piece.
Yeah, I think my main concern, honestly, was I didn't really think he faced much. I mean, it was definitely good to see after they tried to switch to dirt off the layoff and had 2 straight duds to then switch to the turf and find that form again. But I feel like for me, the main concern is, you see they went 22 and change where you compare to when Coppola's been going and they've been going a full 2 seconds faster. I think this one could hang on for a piece, but it's very reluctant putting that horse in third, and I'm worried that you won't get a great price. I think this is ultimately just a 2-horse race, and it's just a question of does litigation get there in time or not. I think it's between him and Reza Rolex, and the rest are just running for third.
Yeah, especially if Reza Rolex sets a pocket-type trip, litigation. He's going to get the jump on litigation in theory. Matter of, I think a lot of us see it as a 2-horse race, whether Reza Rolex gets the jump or litigation can pick them up late going the flat 5 in the Silks Run Stakes race 7 to kick off the pick 6. I'm going 3-1-2. Andrew's going 1-3-6. Charlie's going 3-1-2. Guys, moving on to race number 8, and very early time, but it's drum roll, everybody's favorite time of the day. It is the $10,000 Tapeta Claimer that everyone asked for, but this time it's even better because it's going the flat 5. Two of my favorite things in the entire world on the all-weather track, claiming 10,000, of course, field of 8. Morning line favorite, not even guessing. You guys can pick it up for yourselves. Bring our picks up on the screen right now. We are going with 3 different horses in here. I'm going with the number 5, Plum Irish for Miguel Vasquez and Carlos David. Andrew's going with the horse just to the outside on the number 6, Chloe's Toy for David Egan and Dan Hertak. Charlie's going with the number 7 just to that outside with Misprint and for Marat and Sims. Charlie, I'll let you go first as Andrew went first last time. Misprint's a horse that I was kind of struggling to realize what to do with this horse. It's not my favorite type of configuration by any means. But Misprint comes into this race off a claim and then a move up, didn't run well. Now back to the drop here, but a horse that's always been consistent on the synthetic.
Yeah, no, this is a very wide open and difficult race where really, again, we talk about these certain races from time to time where you're just trying to, rather than the answer to the test, you're just trying to check off all the ones or cross off all the ones that they aren't. And that's kind of how I ended up at Misprint. The way I kind of see it here is, they made the decision to try to move up to the allowance. Obviously didn't end up working at all, but that to me shows that they still think something's there for her. And I feel like if you look at her efforts, she's much better going at the 5 flat than she is at 5.5. It's clearly too long for her. So I think she's going to be pretty forwardly placed. She won't be out of it. She'll be ready there turning for home. And I just feel like when you look at these kinds of levels, I don't really have a ton of faith in anybody really closing in this race. And I just feel like I know this one will be fairly forward and that she at least has shown some ability to sit off and pass. And I'm just sort of hoping that, if she can replicate some of those efforts from, 3 and 5 back in those low 70s where you see that she was sitting a few lengths off and then was actually able to pass and go by. I think that's something that's hard to find at this kind of level. And I think the 5 flat and the drop down is just what she wants. And they tried the 5.5 for a while. And it's just clearly, even though she's one that comes a little bit off of it, for some reason, that extra half is just too long for her to handle.
I mean, I'll tell you what, this is obviously in hindsight, but if this horse is trained by D'Angelo and ridden by Edgar Zayas, this horse is probably 2-1. With the connections you have right now, this horse is probably gonna be somewhere 6-7 to 1. I didn't even try to do that. The jokes write themselves. Just ultra consistent. This horse was 10 out of 16 in the top 2 last year. Really never ran a bad race. Tried, I have no problem with trying the starter allowance type level. Didn't run too well. Drop her back. Excuse me. I'll take a drink for that. Drop her back. So she can somewhere where she can win. Maybe I just overlooked this horse a little bit, but definitely consistency angle. This is one that you could want. And Andrew, this is the horse that I originally had on top, ended up going a different way, but Chloe's Toy, David Egan, who's always fantastic on the Tapeta. It's one of those horses that's straight to PETA, never really been on anything else. You see 31 of 33 races down on the Gulfstream Park to PETA. Just another ultra consistent horse on a level where there's a lot of horses that kind of have question marks.
Yeah, and I kind of like Daniel Hurtak off the claim. His numbers are pretty solid compared to his overall numbers. So this is a game that he likes to play. This horse won last time out at this level. Almost pretty much the exact same race. Sure, her best days are maybe behind her when it comes to speed figures, but she's been rarely really consistent. Even at this level, she hasn't left this claim in 10 level since this time last year. And she really has just been super consistent. I like how David Egan rides the synthetic down there, so that's always an added bonus when the big jocks are out of town. So this horse has just been facing similar competition. Sure, Misprint might have beat this horse a couple times in the past, but this horse has been there each time, and I think just like Misprint, this one's gonna be coming late, and hopefully this one gets the jump.
Yeah, and that's really the one thing that I saw. She is 6 now, but still running probably some of the best numbers of her entire life. Dan Hurtak off the claim doesn't exactly have the best numbers, but you have a decent ROI there with $1.87. 21% last year is really not that bad at all. Obviously, the other numbers aren't the best, but Dan Hurtak knows how to win, has won before, does a lot better in the middle months of Gulfstream rather than the championship meet. However, David Egan hopping aboard with all these other, types of riders that are all going to Tampa Bay this weekend. It's really David Egan and Edgard Zayas are really the two that people are going to look for. So Egan driving on this one, taking the mounts on this one should mean something. And I think that's your most likely morning line favorite coming out of here. I end up going with Plum Irish, who I see, Andrew, you have one second. Charlie, don't have anywhere. Maybe just a little slow, but Carlos David knows how to play these types of levels. This is also one that's just kind of an unknown in a field of a lot of known, if that makes sense. She just went through all her conditions in her 3-year-old year, actually just into her 4-year-old year. She used all her conditions. So now she's in that beaten 10 claiming level. Ran fine last time. Maybe not the best, but that was going 5.5. She's much better at the flat 5 for 6 in the money in her lifetime, and half of those 3 out of 6 being wins. Plum Irish, again, just kind of that fresh face type angle. She may not be as fast as some others in here, but she's, this 4-year-old filly is going to be running against 7, 8-year-old mares. So just a little bit of a fresh face angle in a race, again, with a lot of question marks. Plum Irish is going to be my top pick in a race configuration that's definitely not my favorite. Going over some others in here, you have the number 4, Charlie, in third, who's the horse just to the inside, and Soul Hope. Barry Croft this is another dropper, so one that might be bet just off the drop angle, but a horse that's ran some really nice races, up at some very tough competition type level. Now in the Barry Croft barn, hasn't run necessarily his best since being in the Safi or Mike Maker barn, so maybe trying to bank on this horse will go back to some previous form, but you should get the price to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I'd say the main concern is I wish this was, 5.5, and I wish it was on the turf, because that seems to be where Soul Hope's at her best. But as you mentioned, she certainly, has numbers that, if she's at her best, would make her the horse to beat in this field. The main concern is she is 7 now, and that, again, those best numbers are going 5.5 and going on the turf, and now we're switching to Tapeta here. I just thought it was at least worth a look with her and see what you got. As you mentioned, when you look at the class and you look at who the previous trainers are, you would typically expect a much shorter price. But because, and I know because of the drop, there might be some money taken, but I still think you'll get a pretty square price on this one just because she is 7 and it is switching again now to even, lower connections after being with Safi and Maker, two of the best in the business. So figured it was at least worth a shot here. I mean, I think this is an absolute spread race. I don't think there's really anyone here you can truly trust.
I mean, yeah, it feels like we say that a lot when we go over these types of last horse I'll talk about, and then we'll move on to some other races. Omo 10 Girl for John Consweezy and Jose Morelos, one that's run some really nice numbers early in her career with Jose Castro and Barbosa. A little bit of a barn switch. However, if this horse can get out in front, that's the number one thing to watch out for. And she is drawn to the outside really nicely, which I like. Again, maybe not a win contender, at least of her races, as her races of late have not been exactly the best speed figure wise, but one that might be able to find some back form and at least sneak in to round out your trifectas and exactas. In everybody's favorite time of the week, race 8, I'm going 5-6-8. Andrew's going 6-5-3. Charlie's going 7-6-4. Moving on to race number 9, guys. And this is actually, it's another Tapeta race, but this is actually a really nice handicap. It's a field of 7, but a pretty decent field of 7 at that. Mile and the 16th on the synthetic track for fillies and mares. $100,000 handicap. Morning line favorite. Gosh, I mean, there's so many different ways. This is probably going to be a pretty decent lukewarm favorite in this race. Bringing up our picks on the screen right now. Charlie, you and I are both going with Table Flirt, the number 3 for Edgar Zayas and Bill Mott. Andrew, you're going with the number 7, Charlie's Wish. I see you trying to play to the czar, as they say, with the man Charlie being below me. But this is a horse for David Fox that has been really consistent. And as I scrolled to the bottom of the DRF here, maybe just her last race, took the shot against better competition, didn't work out. But coming back to this handicap level where she ran well at the beginning of the year, it's probably what will suit her best.
Yeah, and I think that she prefers the synthetic over the turf, which I like the return to today, Saturday. And she's just really good at this level, I think. Yeah, she's trying the grade 3 last time out, didn't really pan out. And usually when she's in stakes, it doesn't really pan out for her. But this more like handicap level is where she really thrives. Fox is always on fire, and his barn's really good right now. I think Gutierrez hopping on is no slouch for a horse like this. Sure, would I rather have a jockey like Miguel Vasquez, who's a little bit more known with this horse? Yeah, but I'm not gonna knock the jockey switch here, and I just think that the return to synthetic and the outside post, and a drop in class really is what's going to be key here for this horse.
Charlie, you're on the shopping block here from the boss man. Not going with the namesake, but I can understand being that this horse has shown some inconsistencies. However, Tapeta wise, this horse is definitely better here. But you and I are both going with another horse that I like a pretty decent amount.
Yeah, no, this is very much so an unknown race that makes it kind of scary. I feel like for me, Table Flirt reminds me a lot of a horse that I really like, Awesome Check, who actually ran against some of these in this race, where was the clear class of the field, but was trying Tapeta for the first time. And I thought Awesome Check honestly ran pretty well in that Tapeta effort and just came up a little short, just didn't get quite the right trip there with the way the pace ended up setting up. But yeah, I think Table Flirt here makes a ton of sense. This is a horse that I've chased and liked a lot in the past on turf. Didn't really seem like it was working out after it looked like she was starting to make some progress and had run against some nice turf horses at Gulfstream. Then after the dud that happened at Keeneland, they decided to switch it up and go to the dirt. And I mean, you want to talk about some tough horses to face. How about going on nitrogen in the rough race and then trying to take on Shred the Nard to get yourself a tune-up? Obviously, that didn't go so well. Then took on Dry Powder at Andrews track at Park. So it's really going. And then, last time out loses by 4 lengths to Lush Lips, who's such a talented filly. So really has been facing the gauntlet. And I believe Lush Lips came back to win. Yeah, I thought the horse would come back to win the Honey Fox. So just has by far the hardest strength of schedule. I also think is one where I know the time form indicates that she's not the fastest, but I think she can be a little more tactical here. I think if she can be, it's going to make it even more difficult for these others to beat her because she's already the class of the field. And this is a race where there's really not a lot of pace. I mean, it's probably going to be Miss Marinelle and Fantastic Flame just duel in and out. And I just can see Table Flirt getting pushed into the race a little bit. And if Edgar can just sit off those two second flight and just let them sort of do some dirty work together and make a move. I know Timeform has the horse a little further back, but I think she can show a little more speed. And that's kind of how, I don't know what you think, Kyle, but that's sort of how I envision the race working out. Is I think she sits off those two, gets first run, and I think she just outclasses them.
I think she'll be right next to a horse like the 6 in this race, who I'm a little interested on as well. But she showed some decent speed going 2 turns at Gulfstream Park before, obviously being turf ridden, never been on synthetic before, but this seems like a really nice spot for her to come back in. Bill Mott off the layoff never concerns me at all. And going into the end of last year, she was really starting to pick it up, especially speed figure wise, running that 80 at Churchill, then coming back in the Mrs. Revere and running that at 86. You mentioned 4 lengths only behind Lush Lips, who's by far the most probably the most talented turf filly in the country right now. Lush Lips came back to run the Honey Fox, and I'll shout out my boy Cade, who went to Fountain of Youth with me. It was his first time ever at a horse track, and Lush Lips being his first ever cashed win bet of all time. So shout out to my boy Cade for Lush Lips. And then of course we hammered Commandment at the end, and then we all walked out happy. But Table for It I really do like, and this is going to be part of my best bet, which I'll show in a little bit. But if Table for It takes to the synthetic, I'm very, very interested in what's most likely going to be somewhere in that 5-2 range. And if that's the case, I will be placing a bet on that horse. A couple others that we're interested in. Charlie, I'll go to you first, and Andrew, I'll let you round it out. You mentioned Miss Mary Nell and Fantasy Performer. Miss Mary Nell is going to be part of that pace scenario, as you mentioned. Carlos David and Jersey Joe teamed up last time to win at this level. Probably going to need a little bit better of a speed figure than 83 to win this type of one, however, but still getting a win over the same exact type of configuration and class level is always nice to see.
Yeah, no, the big thing I like with her, obviously, I know this seems sort of like an interesting angle when you look at a race where then you have Fantastic Flame, who didn't really have the same Tapeta experience and was a dirt horse, and yet that one ended up getting hammered late. I think Fantastic Flame was somewhere around 10 or 12 to 1 morning line and went off as the favorite. And yet Miss Mary Nell was 24 to 1 in that race. But the big advantage I thought she had coming into it, and then we ended up seeing there, is she had way more experience on Tapeta. You know, kind of like we were talking about where Andrew was talking about how his horse to the outside seems like the Tapeta. I think Miss Mary Nell is the same way. I mean, you look at her best efforts. You see before she went on the layoff in July, even with a decently hot pace for the level she was running out, 1 going away on the lead at this level. Then they tried to bring the horse back in stakes level racing on turf, and just wasn't the same horse on turf. Went back to Tapeta. I think, was probably had the form dirtied up from the turf racing, which led to her being a higher price than she should have been. Stays on the Tapeta now, second Tapeta effort, a race that doesn't have a lot of pace, and she's probably the fastest in it. I think she makes a lot of sense here. Again, I think if our 3 Kyle takes to the Tapeta, she's just too classy. But if not, with the way the pace scenario shapes up, I think Miss Mary Nell, if Joe Bravo can get brave on the lead, I think she could be pretty dangerous here.
Yeah, and Fantasy Performers that same type of way. She has shown speed in the past and shown really nice speed figures. Just got to kind of find it for Marat and Gambolotti for Charlie and Andrew, of course, having that horse in third. Fantastic Flame, Andrew, is a horse you have in second, and you want to mention anything on Fantasy Performer as well, go ahead. It's a horse that ran really well in an optional claimer. Took the step up to the handicap last time. Didn't run exactly the best, but hoping that she can get back to the 84, maybe even improve off of it.
Yeah, I think she needs the lead to really perform her best. I think that's why she kind of, faded last time out, and she has shown to be fade if she doesn't get that early lead herself. I don't know if she's faster than the 2. I don't think she is, but if she is, it's going to be the speed might hold angle for me with this one. The workout tab's been really consistent. Even coming out of that handicap race. You get Miguel Vasquez, who I think is one of the better Tapeta riders there, as I say, week in and week out. And I just think that we can excuse that last time out and hope that she gets to be more forwardly placed this time out. And if she does, she gets to really show her true ability. And when she is in front early on, she holds on late. Even if it's not to win, she'll still be involved late. So I think that that's the best angle with this horse. And yeah, I don't know. I really like the 7. So I just think everybody else is going to be hopefully fighting for second. But yeah, you guys did make a pretty good case for Table Flirt, even though I don't have it in my top 3.
No, like you said, it's just kind of the way trying to find something, a little bit of value. And again, it can go either way. You'd like Charlie's Wish the most on top with that proven synthetic experience. We're going to try and go with a little bit of a wild card. They'll most likely be somewhere around the same type of betting choice. So we'll see which one's right come Saturday. The only other horse I'm going to mention real quick is Reagan's Flame for Marty Drexler and Edwin Gonzalez. Marty Drexler had a nice win for me in an everyone's favorite time of the week a couple of weeks ago. This is a little bit different animal, and a lot of the times Marty Drexler when he runs here, he takes his horses from Woodbine, brings them down, runs them at Gulfstream on the Tapeta. However, this is a horse that he has off the trainer switch from Lindsey Schultz. Never been on the Tapeta before and puts right on. I don't know if he's trying to see if this horse can run for Woodbine or what's the case, but it is going to be off a little bit of a layoff. This horse has some really nice turf numbers and again, some really nice competition in that as well. Being Stylish Sue, who was a nice horse, obviously came back, didn't run well in the wintergreen, but other than that, has been a really consistent runner for Joe Sharp. There's a lot of things to like in here, and she's really when she's tried the 2 turns, she's been very, very good. Running the mile and 16th at Churchill and Keeneland, winning in second, respectively, and then running that 2-turn dirt race at Churchill, where she got second as well. All her sprint efforts have really been her bad efforts. Kind of excuse the last time at Oaklawn. I don't think dirt's what she wants. Getting back to the synthetic should be better in theory for Reagan's Flame. However, off the layoff, I think she's going to get bet a little bit too much based on those couple turf efforts that she has. But if the pace scenario is not going to heat up, she's probably going to be the first to pounce on the 2 leaders coming for home. In race number 9, the handicap, $100,000 handicap, I'm going 3-6-7. Andrew's going 7-4-1. Charlie's going 3-2-1. Moving on to race number 10, guys. It's a
alrighty.
Oh. All right. Well, what he was going to say is that we are moving into a turf race. That's a mile on the turf, optional claiming.
Dude, hey, you know what, Charlie? Kudos to you, my king. Kudos to you. I hate when that happens, but this is, and of course, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, considering that this is my best opinion on the entire day, and my internet cuts out right as we go into the race. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm probably leaning on the bad thing option.
Well, at this point, I hope it's not the horse I have. So,
yeah, well, it can't be the horse I have because mine's not even officially in the field, so I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, no, Charlie's going the extreme Charlie angle on this one, where he usually likes to pick horses outside of what we call the sequence. This time, he's just going with a horse that's not even in the race, which is a very interesting concept. Obviously, hopefully for him, that horse gets in. This is probably the best race of the entire day. Super competitive race. Allowance optional 75,000 going a mile on the turf, as the king down below so graciously mentioned. I'm sure some different conditions here and there, but it's a full field of 12 and 2 also eligibles in this. I have to restream my screen because my internet likes to mess with me. Putting up on the screen right now, field of 12, 2 also eligibles, as I mentioned. A morning line favorite, I have no idea. Probably shared somewhere between the number 9, Kentucky Bell, the number 8, Tide of Time, and the number 7, Spinelli, as I bring up our picks on the screen right now. And Andrew, that's what I like to add. You get screwed, buddy. Get screwed, buddy. That's what I'm talking about in the number 8, Tide of Time. But being that horse is a Northeast prodigy, the Northeast man has that horse on top. That makes me feel a little bit better. Charlie's going, as we kind of hinted at, with a horse that's not even in the race, with the number 13, Dandana, for Micah Husbands and Safi Joseph Jr. Charlie, of course, if this horse does not get in, that changes your opinions, as you'll touch on when we get to best bets. But as the horse coming out, second off the layoff, out of an optional claimer just like this, running very, very well into what is really a cold pace at Gulfstream Park, going almost 50 to the half mile.
Yeah, and I think she is a very special horse. I mean, for me, this is one where if she gets in, I know the the position she'll get, and she'd be at the outside post would be a little concerning. But I mean, look, they paid $1 million for this horse at Safi. This would probably be my best bet of the sequence if she gets in. I would encourage all our viewers to go back and watch that race, because to me, it was a serious effort. I mean, those fractions already would be incredibly slow if they were going a mile or a mile and 1/8 on a turf. That was only going 7.5. I mean, they were literally walking, and she had nowhere to go. Tyler energy, had to be patient. And as soon as he finally had somewhere to go with this horse, she flew, not to mention the work tab with bullet after bullet. And if you watch her gallop out, her and Wine on Sunday were a solid few lengths clear of the rest of the field in the gallop out. And if people don't know who Wine on Sunday is, she is a very, very, very talented filly for Brian Lynch and my favorite people, the Flying Dutchman, who has a very bright future in her own right. So that's a very nice horse to even get to be able to be compared to, who was, I think, 2-5 on that day. But yeah, was the 3 horse in this race and just absolutely motored home and then galloped out comfortably like a horse that just looked like she could run for days. So I do think if she gets in here, second off the layoff, was always meant to be on turf. The debut was scratched off the turf onto the Tapeta. You can see her motoring home there, and then in the gallop out, she ends up right next to the 2. I had to watch it a second time just to make sure I was seeing the right. I mean, she was just, you see, she's full of run. I mean, she's ready to go again if they would have let her. And again, that 2 horse was a monster favorite and a great horse. So I think if she gets in here, I'm hoping they can get a little more speed into her. The stretch out will help. Second time off the layoff is working bullets in the mornings. I think she's incredibly dangerous here if she gets in.
And how about that? You see that? I got it to go full screen. Shout out to Noah, who's been wanting that for a while. I finally figured out a way to do it. I agree with you completely, Charlie. And this is obviously all caveat if she actually gets into the race. This is a horse that is very interesting. Again, untested, but $1 million filly, Cactus Ridge, coming out of that. Not necessarily the best sibling. Spartan Queen was a decent allowance type horse for Brendan Walsh and Michelle Lovell. This one now for Safi, of course, being at home track. Definitely interesting if the horse gets in, who was also, how the hell did you see? That's what I mean. Told you. How the hell did you do that? Teach me your ways. Oh, I will teach you my ways in a little bit, my king. Don't you worry. I think she's definitely interesting, but of course has to draw into the race first if that's the case. Andrew, my friend. 1, scammer gets scammed. 2, Tide of Time, a horse for James Toner coming out of the Ginger Brew. Lots and lots of cold paces you see on the board. They went 48 last time on a very fast early year Gulfstream turf course. That was probably at the 1 month of the 3-month mark of no rain, basically down here in South Florida. But closed like a train going 50 to the half mile down at Laurel to break her maiden. Been floating at that type of listed stake. Now gets Lasix for the first time, blinkers on, almost like a brand new type horse for a horse that really has already been running comparable figures to this field.
Yeah, I think that this horse is definitely going to turn a new page with the Lasix and the addition of the blinkers. I just think that this horse is really solid and it has just been kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but like it seems to almost be like she's getting bored in her races. And I think the blinkers will add that focus. I don't think it's more of an issue of maybe she's like getting tired and she needs a Lasix to get her to, maybe help out a little bit when it comes to breathing or whatever. But she's losing to good horses. I mean, almost everybody out of that Ginger Brew came back to be better.
Yeah.
And she was 4th by a couple lengths. It wasn't a big field, but I think that you get a jockey like David Egan, like we said, is going to be riding a lot of these trainers Barnes First Call on a day like Saturday. I just think that the Lasix and the blinkers on are definitely going to be a key factor to wake this horse up and maybe get this horse back in the winner's circle like she did on debut up at Laurel.
Yeah, and this was when, again, rail was at 73 feet for the turf. Noah brought up a really good point. This is when he visited me that weekend, and Pass the Hat was the only horse that we saw close on the turf all weekend. So that's a really good point to bring up as well. James Toner, again, 4 for 60, smaller barn. You really don't see him get, Jorge Ruiz is a lot of the time his first call. But David Egan taking this mount really speaks to me, speaks volumes on what this horse can actually be with the added changes that Andrew mentioned, Lasix, blinkers, coming into her 3-year-old year now, her first true 3-year-old race, in my opinion. Last time the Ginger Brew was technically for 3-year-olds, but it was 2 days past the threshold. She hadn't gotten a break. Now she gets a little bit of an extended break, working very, very sharp at Palmettos. I really, really like Tide of Time on Saturday, and what's going to be a good price just for the field size and all the type of connections that are part in part of this race, including the horse just the outside, Charlie and Kentucky Belle. I have her second, you have her third. And shout out to the boss man. He said just finished this handicapping this race. Very interesting. I like what I think will be the price. We have the exact same three in different order, which is actually crazy for a race like this. But Charlie, this is a horse that is probably going to be overbet. Frankly, number one. Number two, really looks just slow on paper, but Brad Cox, Justify Breeding, Edgar Zayas takes them out. You, of course, have to at least pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's very well meant. You can see that when she ran at Keeneland in a big field in a maiden special weight race that she got hammered down to favoritism and ran third and then came back as a favorite again and got the job done. Yeah, this is a tough race. I just saw what Howard said in the chat, which makes me a little less excited about it. This is very much so for me a race where I have, if we did, ABC when we talk about that stuff, where for me that 13 is a cut above the rest and what I think she can be. And then if that horse is out, it gets a lot more wide open. I would say I'm pretty indifferent between the 2, the 9, and the 8 at that point. I really think those 3 are the next cut below. I think Kentucky Belle makes a ton of sense. I really do like getting Edgar Zayas. I think he's the best turf rider at Gulfstream, like when it's, this set of jockeys that are there, so it's good to pick him up. I also like that last time out they were able to get a little more speed into her, because I think if she ran like she did in that Keeneland race, she wouldn't have a shot here. So they need to get more speed in her. There's going to be the question off the layoff. Brad Cox has been great at Gulfstream, though. He's having a really good meet for a track that, normally isn't exactly a specialty. He's known for other tracks. I think makes sense, like you said, with the connections and how well meant she was supposed to be, is going to get overbet in here, which is annoying. Does also get Lasix, which I think can also be helpful. And you see Brad Cox's numbers with first Lasix are insane. So I do think she makes a ton of sense here. I just don't know if I'm going to get a number that I particularly like on her.
Yeah, and I was actually just checking to see, because I know a lot of these other races today are actually going to be run at 73 feet for the rail. Was just checking the conditions. They don't list it at 73 feet. So that'll be a very interesting development, which could change opinions, could not. I think Kentucky Belle makes a ton of sense. And actually, time form, this is why I started using, 2 different speed figures to try and compare. Time form has the 9 rated way above everyone else for that Keeneland race above all. She's still slow compared to everyone else based on the Churchill race. But if you remember, Beyer only had that Keeneland race at 66. However, Timeform has it at a 104. I mean, that's probably a 15 Beyer point difference if you go by Timeform. Usually it's about 20 points between the two. This has an 84 Beyer for that second race. However, Beyer only has it as 66. So that's one interesting fact that I wanted to bring up with Kentucky Belle. I think she makes all the ton of sense in the world from a trip perspective. However, I just think I don't know exactly how good she actually is, and for the money she's going to take, I'm much willing to go other places. The only other horse I want to talk about, and then we'll move on to the feature of the entire card, is To a Flame for Rusty Arnold and Jorge Ruiz, who I assume Howard is the one that is the one Howard has on top. Would be my probably the price if we have the same top 3. To a Flame for Bregman Family Racing, of course, good to see him back in the entries as well, off the layoff. But I'll tell you what, Andrew, this horse has been working like an absolute rocket. Justify, Galileo breeding as well. Breeding looks very, very, is the 9. Okay. Well, like I said, I understand why that horse could be the price just because of how slow she looks on paper. But coming out of the Kentucky Downs race makes a ton of sense. Just going to be a matter of, is she going to be ready off that layoff?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that To a Flame is definitely capable of performing big. It's hard to come off of, Kentucky Downs races, but Arnold gave this horse a way more than a needed time, I would say, to come back off of a Kentucky Downs race, which is a good sign, especially because the workout tab has been so consistent throughout. Well, I mean, this horse did take a couple months off between September and January, but since January, this horse has been consistently running good workouts, fast workouts on the turf, and just consistently week in, week out, which is a good sign coming into this race. So yeah, I think this horse needed some time off after that Kentucky Downs race, as most horses do, and they've been patient with this one. And Ruiz hops off of, it seems to be the 8 and then goes to the 2, which is always a good sign. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that this horse could be a decent price and be a decent horse to use underneath in a field that could be 4 or 5 deep on a big sequence if that 13 doesn't get in.
Yeah, and I do agree. And being what Howard said, you'd imagine she'd go to the stake at Tampa where she's not cross-entered, where she's cross-entered in an optional claiming race. So you'd imagine she'd go to the stake. So, Charlie, I'll see her and root around for you, most likely, down in Tampa Bay. In race 10, guys, the most competitive race of the day, most likely. I'm going 8-9-2. Andrew's going 8-2-4. Charlie's going 13-2-9 for right now. Of course, that can change, and you'll see what if it does change, which it most likely will. You'll see that in the best bets section of the show. The race 11, which is the second to last race we'll be covering, guys, is the feature on the card. It is the Hurricane Birdie Stakes. It's graded. It's a grade 3 going to 6.5 furlongs on the dirt for older fillies and mares. I bring up our picks on the screen right now, going 3 different horses again. So a very tough card as shown by us. I'm going with the number 5, Our Disaster, who's your most likely morning line favorite. Andrew's going with the number 7, Indy Bay, a horse that I loved early in her career, and I don't know where she went the last couple, or at least last race for sure. And Charlie's going with the number 4, Sterling Silver, a 7-year-old mare, but we're all interested somewhere in Our Disaster. A lot of us have the 7 in there, the 4, there's a lot of common ground between all of us. Charlie, I'll let you go first. And because Andrew, I don't want to talk about Indy Bay with you. Number 4, Sterling Silver, is a very interesting horse. She's an older mare. She's 7 now. Used to be in the Bill Mott barn where she was very, very good. But it seems like she hasn't lost too much of a step coming into her 7-year-old year. Last time in the Inside Info, I thought she ran really well behind Grand Job, who absolutely ran a hole in the wind that day. For Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado, funny enough. So what did you like most about the number 4, Sterling Silver?
Yeah, I've just been impressed with how she's come back off the layoff and is seemingly getting better. And it didn't seem like the cutback in distance was a problem. I know she didn't get there, but it was also, a day where it was really hard to close on that track. And as you mentioned, Grand Job just was not getting beat that day, flat out went back to the horse, that everybody used to hype up at the time. Grand Job then was out of form for a while, but came back and looked like the Grand Job of old. Yeah, I know it's cutting back to 6.5, but you look before the layoff and she ran at 6.5 twice and did just fine there. So I do think she can get there in time. I know she also lost to Our Disaster in the past. But for me, where I really key in on it is I think she's getting some class relief here. I like that it's third off the layoff, and I just think there's a ton of speed of this race. I mean, when I was looking elsewhere, Indy Bay, if she's in form, is not slow, and Drea is not slow. And then when we talk about real speed, I mean, Our Disaster is the definition of a speedball. Beyond Belief only knows how to go forward. Lynn's Milky Way doesn't need the lead, but certainly has to go forward. And because of being on the rail, I think she's going to have to show more speed than she would like to. I just see 3 main contenders. They're going to show a ton of speed, and I don't see why Sterling Silver can't just sit a few lengths off of those and get there in time. And I know it's been favoring speed and that, it is a cutback to 6.5, but I do think there's enough natural speed in here that they can set it up for her, and I think Sterling Silver will trip out.
And she absolutely can. I don't have her anywhere. Andrew, you do have her in second. This is one of those things that, barn switch from someone like Bill Mott to Anthony Margata. Nothing against Margata at all. Just a smaller barn, a lot less success, of course. And Castellano is, of course, not in Gulfstream this weekend, so Marat takes them out. Couple things to the negative, but if you're just going off of recent form, this horse absolutely has every chance to win.
Yeah, I think Sterling Silver. I mean, I really like Indy Bay in this spot, but if Indy Bay doesn't run, I think Sterling Silver is going to be the next one that's going to get that first jump on these horses. And I mean, this horse has been really good form since coming to Gulfstream. It's kind of weird that Bill Mott doesn't have this horse, even though Bill Mott has horses in Gulfstream. But the barn switch hasn't really affected this horse. This horse ran a huge number in the Inside Info and lost to, like you said, a Grand Job who, dominated that field. I think that this horse is in good form and with enough speed in this field, I think this horse could definitely get a jump on the rest of them.
And not to mention, this horse was sold for $13,000, and this horse made 1.3, almost $1.4 million. Indy Bay is a horse I mentioned before. I love this horse. She was my top pick in the Charlestown Oaks. One going away for me at 2.5 to 1. Not to mention pairing with Banishing that day. That was a very good day for me at Charlestown of all places, which is usually how it goes. Inside Info was just so bad. I don't know. Maybe she just needed one off that layoff, but Safi Joseph now takes her back into a spot and back into a grade 3. So he's obviously not dissuaded too much by that last time, Andrew. Dylan Davis hops aboard. So lots of things to like here. I need to see her run well again. I think personally before I can have her on top. But if she gets back to anywhere near those numbers before, she makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I look at this as the Dylan Davis is back race, where this is the race that he's going to win, and everybody's going to be like, he's back. I'm glad to see it happen from his injury. I just think that this horse is going to be a little overlooked, I think, because of those last two races. You can excuse the Parks race, how that could be with horses never been at Parks before. Usually I fade horses at their first time over the Park surface, even if they never worked on it or nothing. So I didn't really like that horse in the Cotillion. But the inside info, I think, is this horse just needed to be out there again and figure it all out. And I think that the fact that Safi, in a field where he has almost half the field, he brings this horse into this race where he could probably point this horse into a starter stake somewhere, or a cheaper handicap race where this horse could probably dominate and maybe get a paid workout, as they say. But this horse's previous form before going into that 4 races of graded stakes, that form right here in those races can definitely win this race.
Absolutely.
And I just think that this horse has seen better days, but I think that also has brighter days in the future after those last 2 races. And I'm not giving up on this one yet. And you'll see later on this is one of my more favorable positions of the day.
Yeah, and I'm not completely giving up on her either, but as I mentioned, it's just one of those things. I probably just need to see her run, even if she runs 3rd today. My trust will be back in her. It's just before putting her on top, I want to see her go back to what she used to be again. I am going with Our Disaster, guys, and I know it's not exactly the most creative pick by any means, but there is other speed in here, Charlie. I just don't think anyone's nearly as fast as she is. There's other horses that want to be forward, but like the number 1 in Lynn's Milky Way, she doesn't want to be on the front end. She wants to be in a favorable type of, pocket type position with Our Disaster in front. Sterling Silver wants to be behind. Beyond Belief is, she's quick, but I don't think she's as fast as Our Disaster, though, trying to get to the lead. Love You Morgan is a horse that's closing from the back. Andrea is probably the only one that I have any concern about, but she's been going, to the lead in 24-2, 22-1, those types of when they went fast at Tampa going 1 turn in 21-3. She was she wasn't on the lead, but she was able to sit and go. I feel like her best races is that type, and Roswell's that type of closer. I just feel Our Disaster is by far the fastest horse in the race. And the only one actually that has any chance to do it is Andrea, but that's also a Safi. They're not going to battle each other. So if Our Disaster just gets loose, I feel like this race just could be over from the top. Is she the best horse in this race, in my opinion? No, she's not. But 5 for 5 at Gulfstream Park, never been out of the top 2 at not only Gulfstream Park, but everywhere, running in the Honorable Miss at Saratoga, running in the Gallant Bloom, winning that by 3.5 lengths. There's just lots of things to like here. And if she's returning back to the 6.5 where she's shown she's probably at her best, I'd much rather take this horse over others, even though she's going to be a lower price than a lot. I'm just going to double her with a horse that they said the money horses. I'm going to call it later in the 8 last race, try and pair her up in doubles, pick 3s, and try and get a bunch of value out of Our Disaster. However, I completely understand trying to beat her. For me, I'm just going to go straight up and try and run with Our Disaster. We're running a little bit longer on time, guys, so we'll move on to the last race of the day, which is a nice 1.5-mile optional claimer, which is a very interesting type of condition. In the Hurricane Birdie Stakes, I'm going 5-1-7. Andrew's going 7-4-5. Charlie's going 4-5-3. Race 12, I mentioned, is that 1.5 mile allowance optional, 35,000 on the outside turf at 73 feet, field of 10. And again, morning line favorite, be my guest. I have no idea. I'm going with the number 9, Operation Overlord for David Egan and Todd Pletcher. Andrew's going with the number 3, Pierre for the Ontario bred for Pietro Moran, which great to see that. Obviously, Apprentice of the Year. Good to see him running down at Gulfstream Park. Kevin Attard ships in this horse from Canada, and Charlie going with the number 7, Concord Green for everyone's favorite Florida rider, and Luca Panici and Shug McGahee. Andrew, I'll let you talk first on Pierre. Like I said, we'll probably go top pick, maybe talk about a couple others real quick, and then we'll move on to best bets here. But thank you to everyone who stuck around with us for today. It's a very nice card and lots of betting options and maybe value to be found. Pierre, we're coming in here, ran at Gulfstream Park last time, ran well. Don't necessarily think he ran bad by any means. Getting an 83 almost pairs the buyer top. The only 2 points higher back at Woodbine last year. But another horse that's always here, and you've mentioned it multiple times in the past, even though he hasn't had the best strike rate at Gulfstream Park this year, Kevin Dottard always ships with intent.
Yeah, I mean the connections here are pointing to a spot that definitely favors this horse. Moran was one of my favorite apprentices last year. I think this kid's very talented. He's won some big races up in Canada. And I mean, sure, his United States career hasn't been as hot, or he's really even taken off yet, but he's been bouncing around from, Turfway to wherever really these Canadian trainers ship to. He's getting a lot of good calls and a lot of good wins throughout the country. But I like that he's on this horse because he's ridden this horse before and done very well with this horse.
Yeah.
The career buyer high was with him aboard on the turf, going a similar distance. I just think that this horse ran really good last time out at a big price, and you're probably going to get a good price on this horse today. This whole field is really wide open. I mean, you could, like I said, This is I think this is the most competitive race on the field. But with the 10th race being second. But yeah, I just think that this horse is going to definitely be coming from the clouds. And whenever Moran has ridden this horse has been a little bit more forwardly placed, which I think is to his advantage. But yeah, Dottard doesn't ship down here for nothing. He's 4 for 14 in the money, which isn't the best, but I mean, this is a competitive meet and he's bringing his best horses. So I like this one. Nothing else really to say there.
Yeah, and Charlie, you obviously agree. You have this horse in second. I didn't put him anywhere just because I think he might just be a little bit of a cut below. However, I do like the race last time out. But Charlie, you also have the number 7 in this race in Concord Green. Talk about who has been tried and true at this long distance of a mile, going 3 turns. Pierre hasn't had that, Charlie, but arch, breeding, tapature should be perfectly fine to handle it. Has run a 1.125 really well. Mine has been put at a 1.316 before. So Kevin Dottard his intent has been to bring this horse long, but hasn't really had a spot. This seems like the spot to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's second off the layoff. Tall Bingo is a nice horse. I think when I watched the replay for Pierre, I thought he was closing nicely and galloped out decently. To me, it just looked like one like what you were hinting at, Kyle, who visually, when I just watched, looked like one that just was begging for longer and needed more distance to work with in the mile, especially at a track like Gulfstream, was just never going to work out for him. So I like second off the layoff now, gets the stretch out as well. I just think there's a lot of upside in a race here where I think there's a lot of unknowns. That being said, I do – these are the races I typically don't love, these really long races. I mean, I'm not Noah Maher bad, where I could take a 1-horse 1-9 shot in this race and find a way to miss the board like Noah does in these kinds of races.
Well, hold on here. Don't I smell Santa Anita cooking. Granted, that one was on the dirt, but I smell a 1-9 horse that finished, might still be running from 2023, but anyway, I'll defend Noah. The point is not that. The point is that Noah on these long turf races is maybe the worst handicapper out there. That being said, I just had to throw some smoke on him to have some fun. But Concord Green is a horse I find very interesting. I know this was a horse, Kyle, that you and I know had actually talked a lot about when we watched this one run 2 back, when we were trying to figure out what to do with this one, and was a horse that I believe it opened up actually as the morning line favorite, which we were a bit confused about. Obviously didn't go off favorite, but still took some money at 5-1. Had pace, but was just way out of it the entire time, and then was flying late, but was never going to get there on a day where we talked about past that was really the only horse to even close on that day, but did close pretty well that day. Then they tried it first time at 1 3/8. I thought ran decent. I mean, wasn't anything crazy, but I like that they were at least able to get the experience. Now this is second time trying these more marathon style. I like that they had the blinkers on.
I think, you look from a class perspective and, they tried to run this horse in the Pilgrim. Obviously, I know it didn't run a step that day, has run in some big allowance races. I just think this is one that Shug has always believed was well meant. And even though he's been a big price at certain spots, rather than quickly sort of move to this level right away, I feel like he's given him chance after chance to try to prove himself against much tougher than these. And now is maybe accepting that this is the level that's better for him. I think he makes a lot of sense here. I like the blinkers on. I think Luca can get this one in a nice spot. And, again, for these kinds of races, for as much as I make fun of Noah, I don't particularly like these kinds of races either. And yet I feel pretty strongly about Concord Green here.
Yeah, and Shug obviously being 1 for 39 does not help the case, but
no, not particularly.
I think last time ran more than fine enough at a nice price to warrant another shot in here. Gets an extra eighth of a mile as well. Luca Panici does more than fine on the Gulfstream Park turf course, and blinkers on for a newly turned 4-year-old, which in a field of a lot older, this could be the fresh face that might be needed in Concord Green. Just going to have to get over that little bit of a cold streak from Shug McGahee. And I'm doing the same type of thing, Charlie, but I'm going with a different horse in Operation Overlord for Todd Pletcher and David Egan. This horse is coming out of a maiden, I understand, but it's not like this is any type of stakes race. This is an optional claimer. It's the next step up for a horse like Operation Overlord. But on the Tapeta going a mile and 3/16 ran very, very well. And I mean, they went 46-4 that day at the half mile at a mile and 3/16. That is absolutely no joke. And this horse stayed on. Todd has always thought this horse is going to be bred for longer. War front into mischief. The breeding also screams it. Debuted at a mile and an eighth, then went mile and 3/16 at Aqueduct. Now it tries the mile and 3/16 at Gulfstream, wins, and now goes to the mile and a half. I feel it's just a really nice, steady progression and going to be on the lead, which Gulfstream Park and again, this race is carded for the 73 feet mark, which is going to be making it tougher to pass other horses. So if Operation Overlord goes to the front, I'll take every single bit of that with David Egan aboard. As we mentioned multiple times, I love David Egan on this horse. Just a couple other I'm going to mention, then we'll move on to best bets and end the show. Profound for Will Walden, Degenerate Bill of Rights amendment number 3. Never bet against Will Walden at your own peril was the direct quote from the Degenerate Bill of Rights. Dylan Davis hops aboard this one. Interesting that this horse is going longer now, but Violence, Twirling Candy, Marathon could definitely suit this type of horse. And the steady progression that he's shown all the way through, another fresh face at 4 years old, could be one to upset a little bit. Awfully Naughty is a horse that was super, super good at the marathon distance out on the West Coast for Mike McCarthy. Then got a year and a half break, tried the Willie L. McDyke. That was probably a little bit too soon, too much too soon. Now coming back into here, but is up for the claim, which is the one thing that I did not like in this race. And again, just to the outside, I'll talk about one more in the number 10, Just for Luck for Richard Dutrow, who actually Andrew's a little bit interested in to the outside. One that ran very well last time. This is almost a Dutrow I trust, but Giants Causeway. Distance seems to be no problem and loves the Gulfstream Park turf course. Another one on that steady progression up to that 82 buyer last time out. Could be a player coming for late. In race 12, I'm going 9-7-2. Andrew's going 3-6-10. Charlie's going 7-3-2. Andrew, I'll let you go first. And you so are a man after my own heart now, and I love that for you. 2 win bets again for the man. Race number 9, a win on the number 7, Charlie's Wish that you talked about for the man down below, and a race 11, a win on the number 7, Indy Bay, trying to get back into her good form.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier in our text messages, I'm probably going to be doing the Twin Spires parlay on this one because they're not back-to-back races, which kind of sucks. But who knows? Maybe I'll play a cold pick 3 with Turn a Tide or whatever that horse's name was in the 10th race. That we both seem to are probably good at jinx anyway. So
yeah. I'll just stick with as long as I didn't jinx my Derby horse last time.
Fair.
The jinx is gone. We're good.
Fair point. Hey, well, we might as well just do the parlay instead. Make our own daily double. But yeah, I think Charlie's Wish is going to return to form, especially going to the synthetic, and I think Indy Bay is the same way. So I just think both horses are capable of returning to form, and I think today is going to be their day.
Yeah, and going to get paid most likely to try and find that back into form. So, Andrew, good luck to you, my friend. Charlie, I can most likely get rid of one of these, but your best bet is the turf pick 3. Talking about the 13 getting in. Now that the 13 is not in, you can see in the parentheses, what Charlie will do instead. And in race 11, the turf pick 3, 1-3 with 2-9 with 7. But if the 13 chooses to go here, it is 1-3 with 13 with 7. And race 11 going a double, trying to single the number 7 in the last race in Concord Green. In the Hurricane Birdie going 4-5. So it's race 11, a double, 4-5 with 7, 4-5, of course, being Sterling Silver and Our Disaster, and then singling Concord Green.
Yeah, so with the double, again, we just talked about the Concord Green race. I just think there's a lot of upside there. I like the blinkers on, and I think this is a one for Shug that's always been well-meant, and now he's sort of accepting that this might be a better level, and I think that horse can be tough there. And then with the 4 and the 5, I just think Our Disaster, Kyle, you could absolutely be right about, and I just think I'll get a good enough price that, normally we talk about not going with the 2 favorites when you're playing doubles like that, but I think because of the value we'll get going into the last race and that there won't be any big favorites, I'll get enough value on the double with either of them that it could pay off. And I think either Our Disaster wires them or they set it up enough that Sterling Silver just outclasses them and takes advantage. With the turf pick 3, going with the 1 and the 3, we talked about that race at length, how we really think I think the 3 of us kind of all agree it's a 2-horse race where either Reza Rolex gets the jump and holds off, or litigation closes like a truck and gets there. I talked about my 13 at length. Unfortunately, like Howard mentioned, not only is the horse entered in a $200,000 stakes race at Tampa, talk about an aggressive move by Safi, but also with Pratt aboard. So, I mean, I think the horse, maybe I am right about how well she would do in this race, but unfortunately, I think that means she'll likely go elsewhere. In the event that does happen, I will switch over to the 2 and the 9. The 2 was the horse, I'm blanking on the name right now, but the one that hasn't been seen since that Kentucky Downs effort, but has been working bullets in the morning and seems very well meant. And then the 9, of course, was the horse we were talking about, Kyle, who, we don't know what the price is going to be. I think you and I were leaning more towards Kentucky Belle being, potentially the favorite or close with your 8 and being a short price, but how we're thinking we might get a little bit of a better price. Either way, I think there's certainly some upside there. We talked about the time form discrepancy in the figure, so I'm going to use those 2, and then I already talked about Concord Green. I don't like these marathons, and I know Shug's been about as cold in racing period as Noah is on marathons in general, but hopefully both those streaks can end, and maybe I can get Concord Green here.
That's 2 strays for Noah if you keep me track at home. So check that one off the Charlie bingo card as well. Guys, I tried to hinted at my best bets earlier. It's all going to revolve around Tide of Time. I don't think there's actually any spaces in there. So that's a horse horse and host fail on my own part.
I think you just got to chug the beer at this point.
How much do I got left? I got like 2 sips left in here, so we're good. It's all going to be around Tide of Time. And I mentioned Our Disaster. Going to go double. I can go double from race 10 with Tide of Time into Our Disaster. Or I'm going to probably do a double before because Charlie, that is table flirt in that race beforehand too. And that should be a pretty decent price in there. So I'm going to play doubles around Tide of Time, maybe even a straight pick 3 with table flirt and Our Disaster. Many different ways that I can go, but I'm going to be straight up with going all around the number 8 Tide of Time in race 10 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Guys, it's a great weekend of racing coming up with not even their best day of racing, but Gulfstream Park has some really nice competitive races, but all the eyes are going to be on Tampa Bay Downs this weekend for Tampa Bay Derby Day. That is, of course, going to be covered tomorrow on the HHH Racing Podcast, live Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Picks and Ponies with Howard, Pete, and Paul. I will also be there at Tampa on Saturday. So anyone that's going to be there, please follow me at AP Roscoe K or DM me. Would love to meet up with you guys out there, talk some horses, and get a beverage or 2. But this has been another successful edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And for my co-hosts, Andrew Rosinski and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, for episode 171 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the Gulfstream Park Rainbow Pick 6 for March 7th, 2026, which includes 2 stakes and a synthetic handicap. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.